us to now move to that next step. So all right, so we talked about when you were going to get started. And so for that person that's sitting there like you, they are at the starting line.
Yes.
What challenges are you going through just to get started on day one? Or what challenges have you gone through to get started on day one?
Honestly, I think I was overthinking, like, what questions to ask each kid, how to present the material. And it was because I was going to start with Bible verses and just, have them memorize and kind of go over what it meant. And my youngest was not getting it. So I was like, okay. And I was like, having you in the back of my head, okay, teach what you know, teach what you know. And so I was like, art is what I know. So it was, making sure, again, I had to do it after they were out of school. So they were drained and tired, and, didn't want to do it. And so I had to find a way to make it enjoyable for all and easy. I had to just start off easy. So it was just like simple shapes and different connections to make simple little animals, different, like really almost all of them at I would say a first grade level, just to initiate it. So they understood where it was going to go and let them know it's going to progress until, more about not only how to draw, but the history with art. And, we'll get to do the field trips to museums eventually and everything else. So it was, definitely hard to maintain the attention until I did the simple, easy part, and they're all interested. Like, oh, okay, this is good. We don't have to use our brains so much after getting out of school right now.
Yes. Now you mentioned, and I guess I'll give that background. One of the things that I mentioned to LeAnne is teaching just what you know. I think all homeschooling parents that are struggling with the idea of, I don't even know where to start with this. I don't know if I should order a curriculum. I don't know if I should just, I've had some pushback from people saying there's a difference in homeschooling and teaching at home. So they said, what's happening now with kids doing work from, we'll just say the government school, that the difference is just because they're at home, that does not make it homeschooling, which I agree with that. Yeah. There is a bit of nuance with all of that. However, I think that even for those parents that are teaching at home, maybe the curriculum is the guidelines coming from the school system, I still think that they could begin incorporating and transitioning into homeschooling by starting with what they know. Not worried about the curriculum, not worried about whether their kid is going to get into college or not, and they're only in first grade. All of those things don't matter. So as I told LeAnne, just take one day at a time. Just stay ahead of them by one day. That might turn into 1 week. Then you might turn it into 1 month. Or you know what? You may not turn it into that. But if you always just stay one day ahead of them, the next thing you know, you're now picking out a college at 16 for them to be able to attend. And I can say from my experience, we now have 3 that have started at college at 16. And I look back and it's like, around the world, because I know I didn't understand that math that they were working on. I didn't understand everything with the science, but I just tried to stay one day ahead. So by starting with something that it actually allows you to be maybe one day, maybe even a few months ahead, because you don't have to spend all of this time studying a topic that you may not have, you might not have thought about chemistry or something in science, perhaps since you were in school. But if you just start out with something you do, and I find every parent, every person should, not everyone does, but every person should still be developing. I live by the motto of Lemuel Haynes. I want to go to bed smarter than I was when I woke up that morning. That's what I put to the kids as well. So if that's my goal, whatever I learn that day goes into their heads. And so that way, if it's something that I'm into, whether, as you said, whether it's art, for me, it started out initially with just being fitness. At the time I started, I was in the fitness field. So, you know what? We're going to learn about the body. When you bring your arm up like this, you're actually flexing because this is your bicep. And, it start with the basic things. But because I was learning it and using it in my regular job, it was easy to teach them. So I think I don't want people to gloss over that, because that was the key thing you hit. You're starting just what you know and what you're working on. So now this difference between I have my whole life and I'm in school, they have their whole life and they're in school, you've now started to bring them together. And it's a lot easier to focus on one instead of trying to focus on two different things.
That has been a huge help, seriously. And just they seem more engaged and curious, because it's like they see me on the computer learning, and then they, I'm bringing it back, and so they're like, wow, like mommy's, I'm learning pretty much. Look at it, they're learning college material. So I'm like, there you go.
Yes.
We're doing it together. So it's funny. I was thinking about the math. Like my son was getting an F in math, and I was like, he's really good at math. And it was because of the Common Core, where he was learned and did it the way that we all did it, the simple, right to the matter of fact point. And so I just told him, I wrote his teacher, I was like, he knows the math, he's getting the answers right. He doesn't have to show 6 steps to get to that answer. And so, and he was getting fed up and frustrated, because it made him feel like he wasn't smart enough because he didn't show these steps when he knew how to get to it without it. So I was like, nope, you're very bright. They're have these weird rules and school issues that they're applying to you all, and don't let it affect you. You know what you know, and you know how smart you are. So let's keep going with it. That was frustrating to see.
I think that's that good part. Again, I know people say, well, they're not being homeschooled if they're doing the curriculum of the teacher at home. But to me, that's still part of homeschooling, because what you gave him was something that it might get missed if he was spending, all the days in the classroom. And I think of how it was, let's say it wasn't an F, because you're going to notice an F on the report card. But, let's say he was getting a C. Or as far as, let's say he was getting a B. How many times when we were in school did we get maybe a C or B? Our parents weren't tripping about that on the report card. As long as it wasn't a D or an F, we were okay. But we really could have. We were smart enough to get an A in that class, because what you just said. If we would have heard that, and if our parents would have, known or whatever, they might have been able to push us to, this stuff. This is A stuff for you. Not that, let's be honest, a letter grade doesn't mean a thing. I'm sure we haven't had our high school diplomas and whatever since we left high school, but it's just knowing that you can do something, and that self-esteem that comes along with it.
I love that. Yeah, so true. And it seems like his whole attitude just changed, where he would be more confident and just knock his work out and just know, like, okay, I got this. And I have noticed that them being home and me being able to reassure them and, like you were saying, build their confidence has been a big change, which is another reason why I think they keep pushing and saying, just take us out of school and teach us. So I'm like, okay.
So this is perfect. So let's do a timeline for everyone out there. So really, you are at that point where right now you are more teaching. They are learning at home, but it's the school's curriculum because of everything going on with schools. They have not gone back. Although we do have some areas, I know in my city, kids are going back to school right now. But for yours, they are still at home. They're not in school at all.
Correct. They're still home. Okay.
So you're using the school curriculum at home during this whole thing that we're going to in society. So, and now you have started with art. So how many days a week are you doing art? How much time are you spending doing art? How are you fitting it in?
I'm actually fitting it in after they're done with their classes, because they're usually done about 3. And so what I've learned and what I need to practice teaching for my internship, I usually do it like, let's just say they have a short break of a snack, and then I'll just have them sit down, and I usually do about 15 minutes of something simple, sometimes 30 if they're really into it, and it's usually every day. It might be a missed day depending on the attitude or like the yes, life happening. So it's usually every day right after like a short break after they are logged off and everything, just to teaching the simple basics and where I'm at, where I'm learning.
Cool. Now, do you have a date in mind of when you want to make that transition to bring them home? I'll ask a two-part question. Do you have a date in mind of when you want to transition them and bring them completely home and leave the school curriculum? And number two, what obstacles do you think you're going to go through in order to facilitate that?
That's a good question. As of now, I plan on at least late November. The biggest obstacle right now is because my daughter has seizures. She needs additional support and help, and the state requires the school to provide it. So I have to make sure that she's tested and that she's getting the services she needs to provide it. So that's been like a hurdle. I'm waiting for all that to get done. So once she's gotten approved, and they still have to present and help in the sense of physical and so forth on, once that's in place, then I'm already getting the paperwork together to present to the school that they're going to be gone by. I'm hoping in November, the late November, and pull them out, and right when they give me the results of her testing, I'm like, okay, perfect. And get the stuff in place, then say, here you go, and have that in place.
So in theory, even if any of that gets delayed, in theory, I mean, we'll talk about this, and everyone loves a New Year's resolution. So in theory, yeah. January 1st, even if things got pushed back a little, January 1st, 2021, you could be starting fresh as a homeschooling mom. Is that right?
Yes.
I think that's good. Little take some of the pressure off in November, but it gives you some wiggle room there even for December.
That's true. And I've been looking to like the different resources and things that you all gave me to see how I can adapt it for the younger ones and for LeAnne, because it's constant repetition for her. So I was like, I'm preparing on the side when I'm not doing my own work to try to make sure I get going in the right direction and not just getting lazy and forgetting about it, because I know it's very easy, and I think so. So it's because it is very easy for me to be like, oh, okay, I'll just do it tomorrow. So if I don't continue it, then I know I can just easily be done for. So I'm glad that I'm making the time instead of putting it off.
Now, how old is LeAnne?
LeAnne's 11.
11.
In 6th grade.
All right. So just keep everybody on track, because we got a bunch of kids. So it's like, all right, the 11 girl.
That's right.